Hello again, and welcome to the latest edition of the Carolina Insider. It's a special arena discussion edition. As for several episodes over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about the future home of Carolina basketball, wherever that may be, and all of the different factors and pieces of information that are in this discussion, because it is certainly a hot one, and one that has a lot of different angles to it. Jones and Adam here with you, and we're excited to get started with the Chancellor here at the University of North Carolina. That, of course, is Lee Roberts, and the athletic director at Carolina as well, Bubba Cunningham. Guys, great to see everybody. And Chancellor, this is a topic that's on a lot of people's minds for sure. I know it is a priority for you as well. Why is this a priority for you right now?
Well, first of all, Jones, it's good to see you. Thanks for having us on. And you're right. That's the right question to ask, is why are we even talking about this? It's certainly a high profile and I think fair to say controversial topic. So why take it on? And the answer is that our current arena, the Smith Center, is 40 years old, just turned 40 years old, and needs significant investment to keep it operational, just to put a new roof on and fix the bathrooms and the concessions and do the Disability Act compliance is a significant amount of money. And so before we spend that amount of money, we think it's responsible to step back and make sure that we're spending money as effectively as we can at a time, Jones, when, as everybody knows, it costs a lot more money than it used to field an elite college basketball program. That cost has skyrocketed in recent years, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. So as we look at our options for the Smith Center, and as we look at the need to generate additional revenue, we think it makes sense to step back and survey our options. This is a process that's been underway since before I became chancellor. There's been about 3 years of work underway in the current in the current effort. A lot of focus groups, surveys, outside experts being consulted, and this discussion has been going on for longer than the last 3 years, as Bubba knows better than I do. So this is a conversation that's been around for a while, and given the significant need to invest in the Smith Center, no matter what we do, we have to make some decisions.
Bubba, I think everybody understands that where Carolina plays basketball is important because it's a place to play the basketball games. But what's the significance of that place to the athletic department as a whole? And then I think, Chancellor, also to the university as a whole, whether that's the Smith Center or somewhere else, why does that matter to the larger department and university?
Well, as you know, Adam and Jones, I appreciate being on as well as with the Chancellor, but the only economic drivers we have in college athletics, and particularly at Carolina, are football and basketball. And as the Chancellor mentioned, we've been really looking at this in earnest since the fall of 23. But we actually started looking at it back in 2012. And I got here in 2011. We had just opened the Blue Zone. And by the fall or the spring of 2012, I started looking at the financials associated with the Blue Zone and said, my goodness, if we can retire the debt and we still have a couple $1 million at the end of the year to plow back into our athletic program. And I said, boy, if we can do that in football, imagine what we can do in basketball, given the prominence of Carolina basketball. So we actually started looking at it back then, and that's when we came up with the idea of maybe putting something in the Bulls lot. And how do you extend what we currently have? We have a great program. We knew costs were going to continue to rise, and as the Chancellor mentioned, they've accelerated in the last 5. So how do we maximize the return on the basketball program so we can put it back into the athletic program, specifically basketball? And as the costs have skyrocketed, now's the time to really put it on the front burner. Because in 2013, we said, we're going to go into a university campaign. Let's concentrate on all of the projects in Central Campus. That's when we did the indoor facility, did soccer, lacrosse, field hockey. We moved the track. We did all of those things. And we said, okay, we'll come back to it at the end of the campaign. And that's where we are. And it does coincide with a 40-year anniversary of a building that is aging. And it does need an awful lot of upkeep to even continue in the existing site. But I'd prefer to invest and then get a return on that investment.
Chancellor, when this is all said and done, whenever the ultimate decision is made and there's either a new arena or the Smith Center's been renovated or whatever ends up happening, what's important to you at that point? Like what needs to be the end result as far as what this arena is and what it does for Carolina basketball and what it does for the University of North Carolina?
Well, I think we have to keep three principles in mind as we try to make these decisions and get as many people around the table as possible, get as much feedback as we can. First, how do we win as many basketball games as we possibly can? I think we should be keeping that at the forefront of our minds. And as I said, and as Bubba emphasized, that's more costly than it ever has been in the past. It also means a great recruiting environment, excellent facilities for our players and coaches and staff, not just a great arena, but weight room, training facilities, locker room, practice facilities, all of which in our case are not at the cutting edge. I don't think anybody would argue that. But the revenue point is crucial when it comes to staying elite and winning as many games as we can. How do we make sure that the students have a fantastic experience, are coming to the games and being as loud as they possibly can? This program belongs to our students. It's their program. It's their team. Our student attendance in the Smith Center has been declining for 20 years. And that's not the fault of our students. Our students are extremely busy people. We're not giving them the best experience in the Smith Center. Even for the Duke game a couple of weeks ago, every student on the standby line got in to the game. We're just not attracting students to the games to watch them in person the way we used to. Our games didn't all used to be on television. Our students weren't always carrying a broadcast device in their pockets, and so the bar has been raised to get students to the games, and we want more students in the arena, closer to the court, making it a tough place to play, giving the students a reason to come to the games and cheer loudly for the Heels. And then thirdly, how do we make it a really great fan experience? How do we convince fans at a time when they have more options than ever before to get out of their living rooms, get in their cars, fight through the traffic, deal with the parking, and watch a game in person, to get to the games on time, stay for the entire game, again, to create a really good experience for the fans and make it a tough place to play for our opponents. So we're trying to balance all of those factors. And as Bubba said, Jones, the world is changing pretty rapidly around us, maybe more so than in the past. And that presents a challenge for a program like ours, because the best thing about our program is the incredible history and tradition that we have. Nobody else can touch the legacy of Carolina basketball. But that incredible legacy can sometimes make it hard to react as quickly as you need to when the world is changing very rapidly around us. Harvard has 12 national championships in football. The last one was in 1920. I'll bet that in the middle of the 1920s, as Alabama and Notre Dame and USC were investing a lot in football, building new stadiums, really ramping up their programs, I suspect they sat around at Harvard saying, hey, man, we're Harvard football. We've won 12 national championships. We don't need to change. Let everybody else change. We know what we're doing. And the world changed around them. They didn't know they had won their last national championship for the next 106 years. And so I think that's a cautionary tale. College sports are changing incredibly rapidly, and we have to figure out a way to stay true to our best traditions, to honor our legacy, while continuing to adapt. And I would say that, I didn't know Coach Smith. I wish I did. But when I read about his legacy, that's exactly what he did, whether it was racial integration or the four corners offense or moving out of Carmichael to the Smith Center when circumstances called for it. Coach Smith was an innovator, and he responded effectively to how the world of college sports, college basketball was changing around him to make sure that Carolina stayed at the forefront. And that's the legacy that we need to fulfill.
Can't tell you how many rooms I've sat in where people just sit around going, "Hey, man, we're Harvard football." And this seems like a delicate balancing act, Chancellor and Bubba, because Chancellor, you're talking about the student experience and getting them closer to the court. Bubba, those are also the seats that have the most financial revenue attached to them. How do you balance these two things that are both needs that you've both identified?
You're right. And that's part of the trade-off that I think the Chancellor was talking about earlier. That we do want to get the students closer, but in the existing arena, we have seat rights the generous donors that provided the funding for the construction of the Smith Center have the vast majority of those seats right next to the court. A few years ago, we did create the risers, and that took quite an undertaking to have some people get relocated so that we could put those risers in. And so as we look at the financial models going forward, we have to look at a new arena and what are those revenue opportunities, a new arena on campus, what are those revenue opportunities, and a renovation of the existing arena, and what are those revenue opportunities, and keep the existing seat holders in the same place. So those are all going to have an economic impact on the financials as we look forward. And we've had incredible work done by Legends, which is a nationally renowned firm that, started with the Yankees and the Cowboys. And they've done a lot of work on a lot of the elite programs in the country, both football and basketball, and pricing these things. So what we're going to continue to do is kind of drill down further and say, what are the economic realities of these different options that we have before us? But there's not one that's going to be perfect either. We're not going to all of a sudden have that Shazam moment and say, this is it, because all of them are going to be a trade-off.
And something we do hope to do as we move through several episodes of this arena discussion is have some experts joining us and take a deeper dive into some of these financial questions and the numbers that Carolina has found as it has worked with different people to leading up to this moment of this decision, whenever it may come. Also talk to some folks about the seats and how does those affect the choice as Carolina makes that decision moving forward. Bubba, speaking of the basketball program itself, it seems like we were decently close to a decision a couple of months ago on this arena, and then things started to slow down a little bit. Can you take us through that sequence? And ultimately, do you wish that there had been more communication with the basketball program at some point in time in this discussion?
Oh, no question. No question. And so, as I mentioned, we started the process in 2023 with a different leadership group. Quite frankly, Kevin Guskowitz was our chancellor, and we had a different board. And we started down that path. Our initial meeting, I believe, was in August of 23. And we were in the basketball museum with a handful of our trustees and saying, here, let's take a look at this. Fast forward to fall of 24, I guess that would have been. We had gathered a lot of information from the experts that I mentioned, and we had a new chancellor. We had some transition in the board, and then we had the transition in our football coaching staff. And quite frankly, that's the time where we should have been communicating, hey, here's what we've gathered. Here's the information that we had. But the information that we had late fall of 25 indicates that there's about a $20 million differential between a renovation on campus and a new facility at a different site. And that $20 million delta was compelling. And we said, that really seems to make the most sense. But as we floated that out, I said, whoa, it's not just an economic decision. We need to take more time. There's an emotional component to this. There's a logical component to it, and there's a financial component to it. And so I think, to the chancellor's credit, he said, hey, let's pause it here. We're going to do Carolina North no matter what. So let's do the RFP. and let's take a breath and really get more information, more input from the constituents that are going to actually use the building, whether it's the players, the students, the donors, whoever it has a voice into this, and say, let's make sure that we come as a unified community. What's best for Carolina basketball? And that's where we are today. So I'm disappointed we didn't think of that earlier and have lined up more efficiently. But I'm delighted we're in the spot we're in now, because now we have a chance for the community to really weigh in.
This may be more of a question about how to be a chancellor, which I've really been thinking about, honestly. But Chancellor, as you
Welcome
mentioned,
any suggestions.
I feel like you don't get any, so this might be a great time. As you mentioned, Chancellor, there's a ton of people who have opinions on this, and some are very passionate. As you're trying to synthesize all these different data points, some of which are black and white financials, and some of which are intangible, emotional type things that Bubba was just talking about. How do you figure out when you have enough information and feel like, okay, it's time for me to put this together. This is how I'm going to move ahead.
Well, you're right. We've got a large, complex organization with a tremendous number of stakeholders who care passionately about the future of the university, future of Carolina athletics, and especially about the future of Carolina basketball. And that's a good thing. I'd be much more worried if people didn't care. What you're seeing right now is the result of that passion, people with a wide range of views and opinions. And we want as much of that feedback as we can possibly get. We want to get as many people around the table. We want to hear from as many folks as we can. There is obviously a point at which you need to make a decision and move forward, and no one's going to ring a bell and say, okay, we've got enough feedback, now we have to go ahead. And there are obviously, not just with this issue, but with most of the issues we deal with on campus, there are sometimes people who call for more discussion and more debate as a delaying tactic because they don't want anything to change. And so we have to sort through all of that and make sure that we're making a good faith effort to gather as much feedback as we possibly can and make the best decision that we can for the future of Carolina basketball. And, I think sometimes when we start talking about revenue generation, folks say, I wish this wasn't all about money. And I get that. We share that view. There's a lot that's happening in college sports that is a big change from the way it has been in the past, and not all of it is great. I'd be the first person to say that, but the folks in positions like mine and like Bubba's, not just at Carolina, but at peer universities around the country, we don't have the luxury of saying, I wish things were different. I wish we could go back to the way it was before. We have the responsibility to grapple with it and figure it out and try to make sure that we're putting Carolina basketball and Carolina athletics and the University of North Carolina on the best footing as we possibly can as the world changes rapidly around us. And so we can only do that by hearing from as many voices as possible, but we also have to make decisions and do our best to move the institution forward.
All right, we've already gone almost over 20 minutes here, and appreciate both of you gentlemen joining us today and talking about this topic. Before I kind of get to any final thoughts that you may have, at least for this afternoon, Chancellor, do you have a general time frame in which you would like to have this decided? I know it's not a specific date at this moment, and you want to continue to get as much feedback as you can, but do you have a general time frame when you'd like to make this decision?
No, we haven't put out a particular time frame. We want to make sure that we're casting as wide a net as possible, as I say, and getting as much feedback as we can.
All right, guys, before we get out of here, Bubba, let's start with you. Any final thoughts, any final message that you'd like to get out there this afternoon?
Well, Adam, you asked the chancellor about making decisions. And I recall as you were asking that question, that Colin Powell used to give leadership lessons. And he said great leaders have to make decisions with about 60 or 70% of the information, and have to be convicted and move forward. He also said, soldiers in the field are right until proven otherwise. And in this case, the soldiers in the field, I believe, are our players, our coaches, our students, and our donors. And I think that's exactly what we're doing now is the finances say one thing, and we want to make sure that we're right in the decision that we make going forward.
Chancellor, any final message you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, I'll just say, it's easy to get bogged down in the discussions about revenue and the costs of different proposals and the nuts and bolts. But if you step back, Carolina stands for excellence, and Carolina basketball especially stands for excellence. Are we playing in an excellent facility right now? I think everybody knows the answer to that. So let's go be excellent. Let's do what we have to do to make sure that the best days for Carolina basketball and Carolina athletics are yet to come. It's not going to be easy, but the history of our program and the history of Carolina athletics is that we've adapted to changing circumstances to make sure that we not just maintain, but extend our traditional leadership position. And that's what we're going to do here.
Chancellor, thank you so much for your time. Bubba, thank you for your time. We appreciate both of you joining us today and look forward as we move through the next couple of weeks and discussing this topic and learning more about it and ultimately the future of Carolina basketball. So thank you both so much.
Gents, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Go Heels.
Thank you.